Welcome to Aspen Ignites, Conversations to Build a Better World, a series from the Aspen Institute that brings together thoughtful people with diverse backgrounds and points of view. In this episode, the topic is leadership and the Ascend Fellowship. Anne Mosle is Vice President at the Aspen Institute, Executive Director and founder of Ascend at the Aspen Institute, and co-chair of the Aspen Forum on Women and Girls. St. Paul Mayor Melvin Carter joined her in conversation with Jenn White, host of NPR's 1A.
And Mayor Carter, thank you for joining me for this important conversation. On our program a lot, we talk about leadership and we talk about the loss of trust in our institutions. And when you're trying to build community, when you're trying to launch public policy, that trust is essential. But when it's broken, how do you fix it? And Mr. Mayor, I'll come to you first.
Well, it's the important question because it is broken all throughout our society. We distrust government, we distrust each other, we distrust anybody who says anything that isn't what I already think. And it's a problem for our ability to learn and grow together. One phrase I learned from Anne a long time ago was change at the speed of trust. And we talk a lot about how critical trust is to the change process. It's a necessary agreement. So the way we approach it in St. Paul really is by turning the question on its head. It's not how do we get people to trust us? It's how do we demonstrate our trust for people? And when we can do that, we find lots of things change.
I mean, and change at the speed of trust. There are times when change is needed quickly, but trust heals very slowly.
Yeah.
How do you balance competing interests, especially if you're in a leadership position?
Yeah, no, that's it. I love the that kind of friction you have about when you need to speed up, and trust doesn't just happen.
Yeah.
To that point, trust is something, especially for leadership, which is more of an action and a being than a kind of hat you wear. And you build and build and build trust. So good leadership is doing that sort of on a daily basis. And the most fundamental part of that is not having the orientation on oneself. And so when we think about what Mayor Carter said, even in St. Paul, and as in his role as a mayor, to be able to first see a community, a family, people first, that lays the groundwork. And that will give you the time when you have to make perhaps a really hard call or move fast. Might not always have that, but you know, for people that are in leadership positions, typically if you're the kind of values-based leadership I'm really fascinated in investing in, is you're gonna have someone that they've got a credibility track record somewhere that people can hang their hat on. And part of that, you know, that trust piece is you have to really have that clarity of purpose so that you can explain it and that people can understand it so they know the why.
I'm curious where that credibility process started for you. I mean, you're in office now, but I would imagine it had to start before you took your oath of office.
It had to start way before that. I represent a community that my family's been in for 5 generations. And so a lot of the folks who, and I'm Melvin the Third, by the way. So there are folks to this day who aren't sure if they voted for me or my grandfather.
Right.
And we took them all. We accepted all of those votes. But a part of that is the work that you do, you know, and I share with people all the time who are interested in running for office. You know, from my perspective, if you're running for office because you want to make a difference about affordable housing or jobs or whatever it is, then I want to see the affordable housing work or the jobs work or the climate work that you've done outside of elected office, because people don't suddenly become a whole different type of person once they carry an election certificate. They become an extension of who they've been. And so being able to see that type of work, I think, is really important. But then I think the core thing that helped for us when I first decided to run for mayor, we started the campaign with literally 2 years of just listening to people in coffee shops and listening to people in living rooms, listening to people at barbershops. And then when we brought, and I'll tell you, I see the city differently because we did that.
Okay.
And the vision that we brought forward, the platform that we brought forward when it was time to actually launch a campaign was fundamentally different when we got a chance to see the city through their eyes.
How was it different? Because if you said you're 5th generation,
Yeah.
how did your perception change? Because I would think with that history, in your city, you know it inside out.
You know what? In my transition, when I first got elected, the former deputy mayor asked me if I was going to move the furniture in the mayor's office. And it was a mind-blowing question. I've been around City Hall for 20 years. It didn't occur to me that it was in the power of the mayor to actually move the desk from one side of the room to the other. So we end up so married to the things that we get used to that you have to, I think, constantly sort of immerse yourself, bathe yourself in just community members and bathe yourself in people's perspective. And one of the things, like I said, that really became clear for me really quickly, I ask people every day, why are you raising your child in this city? That's the most important decision you'll ever make, and you chose us. Why are you building your business here? Why are you launching that idea here? And one of the things that became really clear is that there's this incredible mismatch between the magnitude of dreams that people plant in our city, in our state, in our country, and the magnitude of initiative, the magnitude of risk, the magnitude of go get it, go change it, take a risk that we endeavor from city halls and state capitals and from the Washington, D.C. And so our goal has been to right-size that.
In listening to Melvin talk about that process of listening to people as a way of building trust, how does it also connect to how you get buy-in
Yeah.
to policies?
Yeah. Couple of things. So kind of building right upon what Melvin just shared through some really powerful stories and examples. Curiosity is critical. Leaders that are really curious and seeking new answers, new voices, new perspectives. Keep doing the same thing, we're going to get the same answers. And that's been a whole part of the leadership paradigm of our country.
That's right.
And who ordains or certifies what is leadership? I fundamentally believe leadership lies in every single person. And part of what's really exciting about the work of the Aspen Institute that's approaching its 75-year anniversary, the world is very different, with also some same historical challenges and divisions and things we have not been able to face. But even to take institutions, and even just taking Aspen, need to see leadership, be curious, be open. And so there's that part. Then there's the credibility. And the credibility is the wisdom, the experience. When everybody voted for Melvin, they got the whole they got the whole family when Melvin was elected. So good voting in Minnesota. But this piece around credibility is also how you seek answers. And Melvin said something that's really interesting that I see a lot, like literally at the White House to agencies or at the community level. Sometimes we're so conditioned to accept where we are that we're in a business of tinkering and not transformation. And like the powerful example of just being like, of course I have the power to rearrange the furniture. Of course I do. And so just like say here we are coming out of the pandemic. And Jen, you wrote this great, a great piece on like the safety net and access to food. During a pandemic, we made an answer to say we are going to increase food assistance to families. We are going to get cash directly to families. We're going to put families at the center.
That's right.
We're going to make sure people have health insurance. And then all of a sudden it rolls back. And who decided that we no longer can do this anymore because we're going back to some old norm? And so this piece of really having that curiosity and the credibility and the confidence to ask new questions or engage with new voices, I think is really important. And the last part that I'll share is just that reliability, because it goes back to your trust piece. People know like where you choose to shop, play,
That's right.
go to school. For me, like where I have shown up over my life tells a story. What you say yes to or who you say yes to, you say no to someone else. And so literally that presence of how you show up, your willingness to take risk, your willingness to take risk with and for others, not only who you stand, like what we stand for, but also who we stand with, are ways that how leadership, I think, concretely plays out, and where it is such an extraordinarily bright light when I try to think about the future. And I've got 2 kids, I'm a little nervous, but when I look at leadership, like what is happening in St. Paul with Mayor Carter, it's authentic, it's an abundant mindset, and I think it's what our country needs desperately more of.
Well, to that transformation point, your city, with you and in your leadership role as mayor, you've been one of the early adopters of guaranteed income,
Yes.
along with some other Ascend fellows, as I understand.
Amazing. Getting cash to
right.
families.
But this is still a relatively new idea, and there is, I think, deep resistance to it because of our belief in the mythology of the American dream.
Because of the racist and sexist and classist tropes that we've all heard driven into us all of our lives.
That too. That too. But it's a policy you took on.
Yes.
You pushed forward. How did you get people to agree and say, wait, we see the vision, we're willing to take a risk
Yeah.
and see if it works? What was that process like for you?
One, this work is amazing. It's phenomenal that it's as new as it is. My joke that I tell all over the country is we're 60 years into a war on poverty and we're just getting around to giving money to poor people. That's insane to me. And an example exactly of what Anne was just talking about. And in fact, we've gone in just the past couple of years from one city, Stockton, California, former Mayor Michael Tubbs leading this work. And I'm really proud to be one of the national co-chairs of this organization called Mayors for Guaranteed Income. And we've gone from one city doing this sort of on the fringe to over 100 mayors as members of our Guaranteed Income Coalition, over 4 dozen pilots around the country. And so St. Paul was number 2. And the truth is, by the time we came around to saying we're going to do a guaranteed income pilot, our community was already on board. The reason we're already on board is because it's a part of a body of work for us. We launched the College Savings Accounts Initiative. We start every child born in our city with $50 in college savings. We're working right now to help transition businesses and apartment buildings to worker-owned and renter-owned cooperatives. We opened an Office of Financial Empowerment to help people make money work for them. We've eliminated late fines in our public libraries and participation fees for youth sports, and seen use in our libraries and our rec centers skyrocket as a result of it. So our community members are going along with this. And essentially what we're doing is we're trying to say, I think we've bought into a model, a defunct model, a bankrupt model of city building that tells us a city is a place, and you improve that place at the expense of the people. That if you want to make it safer, lock up all the black and brown kids you can find. If you want to get around better, pave roads right over a home. If you want economic empowerment, like find some business from somewhere else or some worker from somewhere else to come in. And our goal is to switch that on its head, to switch that old model of city building on its head, and demonstrate every single day that we believe in the people who exist here, that we're willing to bet on the people who live here, and we want to see what it looks like if the road to a city's future is paved on just unapologetic big bets on the unlimited human potential that already exists within it.
Jen, can I do a quick follow-up on that
Sure,
point?
sure.
Because this is such a great example of flipping the script, and I love how Melvin's putting it in the historical context, like the war on poverty. And if we think about what's still at the heart, where he named the really pernicious isms that still plague us,
Yes.
go back to that. We're thinking it's 1965. Head Start has started.
Yep.
And we think about the first Head Starts and how they were treated in other communities and how they were treated in Mississippi. And I raise that because in Jackson, Mississippi, Aisha Nyandoro is another Ascend Fellow, and she and Mayor Carter are at the forefront of this flipping the script around power and possibility and potential.
She's way ahead of me in that, by the way.
But that's probably smart always to say. She's watching. But no, but the thing is, the trust is they're in it together. There's no questioning. And they're building movements and other follows because they see what it looks like leadership in action together. But in Jackson, Mississippi, Aisha has doubled down on getting cash directly, effectively, more efficiently. So the conservatives should love this. It works well on tax breaks. But getting money effectively to the families where it's into single black mother families where mental health and stress are lowering, school attendance is going up,
That's right.
reading and literacy and connection, all these really important metrics are going up. This is being held in a context of the government, the state government of Mississippi,
That's right.
that has literally embezzled millions and millions of dollars and taken what the fraud and abuse from public dollars that are purposely for families with lower incomes to survive. And I share that because when we think about leadership, we have to be able to hold in our head the big picture and think about the strength and the resilience and the integrity and what's working and respect and honor and get right behind those Black families, Black mothers, leaders like Aisha down there, and hold the leaders, in this case, Jackson, Mississippi, who are kind of white establishment, accountable for their actions. And this is, an area where Governor Bryant down there, Mississippi, has done a lot of great work around early childhood, but you cannot say I'm pro early childhood if I'm not going to hold the leaders accountable who are not serving the public well.
Yeah.
As I'm listening to both of you talk, and what's interesting to me is that there's data and then there's story, right? Oftentimes we see public policy built around a story, but not necessarily around
That's right.
data. And I know you're seeing good results in St. Paul around guaranteed income. But you also have to create a new story for people who are resistant. What is your role in that process as a leader?
That's the core part of our role. I mean, listen, we're a city that, has all of the same challenges as every other city. We have to fill potholes and send fire trucks and all those other things. And one of the things we've been really clear about, we used CARES Act dollars first and American Rescue Plan dollars to launch our guaranteed income pilot. We're achieving amazing results. We're seeing them around the country. Don't just take my word for it. We've actually created a Center for Guaranteed Income research to track the policy and do the evaluation. We can track the dollars. 90% is going to basic necessities. We can track the outcomes that families are having, and they're really phenomenal. People are gaining employment. People are gaining economic traction, et cetera. That's really important. But you're right. Without the story, and the data actually sharply contradicts the old story, but the old story is still powerful. We're really powerful. We're really proud. We just saw a couple of weeks ago at the Tribeca Film Festival, we premiered a film called It's Basic that follows a cohort of some of those families, 3 families from St. Paul, through that experience. And it's just a really profound and powerful group of stories from these families' perspective. And what we find out really quickly is we talk a lot around the country about saving democracy. And I think most of the times when people talk about saving democracy, they're talking about making democracy function. That's important. People having voting rights and having access to the polls is really important. I think guaranteed income and some of the types of policies that Anne was just talking about is about making democracy work, which is a fundamentally different thing. It's got to be able to impact people's lives. People have got to be able to say, my life is better because of what happened in City Hall. My life is better because of what happened in Washington, D.C. And we're seeing people be able to say that through this work to the extent that they think it's a hoax when our staff calls them.
Wow.
Because it's beyond our mental model for government to be that directly relevant in our lives.
Yeah.
Bringing the governance, bringing that with and for and among people, there's real wisdom in that. Real wisdom in that. And I think it's one of the things that, I've worked with Mayor Carter and others, but one of the unique things about the policy work I do at the Aspen Institute is changing how we set tables so that those that are most proximate to the historical and structural and inequitable and just concrete challenges of what's of the heart, just think what's poverty or just the challenges, but also are holders of some of the most important ideas and solutions and recommendations. That's a flip on leadership perspective on setting tables and expanding them, but seeing leadership in everybody. And, there's been a lot of shifting around both through, we were working on this before, but the Biden-Harris executive order on racial equity and underserved communities, leaders of color, Black, Indigenous, Native American, to across all people of color, as well as rural, for example. But those that get forgotten are written in to be at the table. And when they're at the table for co-creation, co-buy-in, and are part of the decision making, we actually get better governance. We get better decisions. That's democracy. And that's the way I think about it. It's almost like this proximity promise that the closer you are, you're in deeper relationship.
That's right.
And honoring and really believing in those recommendations, you will see simple brilliance. One very quickly, I was in this one table, it was in the District of Columbia. It was a while back, and we were in a total juvenile justice, child welfare meltdown in terms of group homes, and all these people were as to reports, testifying all sorts. We held a group. I was at that time in the Washington Area Women's Foundation. I brought in a group of young women, just diverse women that were living in the group house, young women. Had some good food, sat in a circle. I said, what's most important to you? They were like, maybe when I come home, the food cupboards are not locked, so I can eat. I'd like to have the person who's the night supervisor not continually knock on the door and say he wants to come in my room. Okay, I think we got some marching orders. And so that kind of listening, inviting tables, and then acting, I think we're just leaving so much on the table as a country. We kind of really need, again, to flip the paradigm.
And when you act, it's their policy that you're enacting, so they're already bought in.
Nothing about us without us.
That's
approach
right.
to policy.
That's right.
Just as we wrap up here, Mr. Mayor, I'm curious how you are taking what you're learning as a mayor, what you've learned in your fellowship, and taking this approach to the next generation when it comes to leadership, how you're preparing the person who's going to be moving the furniture in the mayor's office.
That's right. That's right.
Next.
That's right. It's the most important part of our work. And so one of the things that we do is we do all of our work through a decentralized kind of way. Our phrase is, I don't want my constituents to know how much power I have in City Hall. I want them to know how much power they have in City Hall, whether I'm there or not. And so everything we do, every member of my cabinet has been hired through what we call our community-based hiring process. Every budget that I've brought forward, we bring forward through participatory budgeting processes. Every major policy we've advanced, we get made fun of because we bring so many task forces and commissions into City Hall, and people say, well, that's not leadership. And we say, well, it is now. But one of the core things that we do is we require for as much as we can, our goal is for every commission, every task force that we name to have at least 2 young people on it. And 2, so the one person doesn't get sort of isolated.
Yeah.
To have at least 2 young people on it. So they're learning how the city works. So they're learning how these task forces operate. So they're building the relationships with the people they have. And I always tell them, you're going to need this city a lot longer than I am. You might as well start directing it now.
Well, Anne, Mr. Mayor, it's been great to talk to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you for the conversation.
Thank you, Jen.